The briefing room fell silent when Commander Hayes announced the assignment. 6 Navy SEALs sat around the tactical table, their faces a mixture of skepticism and barely concealed amusement. They were being assigned a guardian for their supply convoy through the mountain pass, someone to watch their backs through 60 miles of hostile territory. The catch, their guardian was a woman, not just any woman, but Staff Sergeant Elena Volkov, a name that meant nothing to them, a face they'd never seen in combat, and a reputation they'd never heard whispered in the halls of special operations. What happens next will challenge everything these elite warriors thought they knew about strength, precision, and the true meaning of having someone 6. If you've ever doubted the power of quiet competence over loud arrogance, stay with this story because what unfolds in those mountains will leave you speechless. Sergeant Mike Bulldog Connors leaned back in his chair, arms crossed over his chest. He'd served 3 tours, survived firefights that would make lesser men crumble, and earned his trident through Hell Week that broke men twice his size. The idea that they needed a babysitter, especially a female sniper from some Eastern European military exchange program, struck him as insulting. His teammate, Jake, muttered something under his breath, and the others chuckled. Commander Hayes shot them a warning glance, but even he seemed unconvinced. Elena Volkov's file was thin, classified in places, with only a single photograph showing a woman with ice-blue eyes, and an expression that revealed nothing. The next morning, as dawn painted the sky in shades of amber and gold, the convoy assembled 6 armored vehicles, 60 personnel, and enough supplies to sustain a forward operating base for 3 months. The SEALs moved with practiced efficiency, checking weapons, securing cargo, reviewing maps. Then she appeared. Elena walked across the compound with a rifle case slung over her shoulder, moving with an economy of motion that spoke of someone who never wasted energy. She was smaller than they expected, maybe 5'6", lean rather than muscular. Her gear was different too, customized in ways that suggested years of field experience rather than standard issue equipment. She nodded to Commander Hayes, ignored the stares from the SEALs, and climbed into the lead vehicle without a word. Bulldog exchanged glances with his team. This was going to be a long 60 miles. The convoy rolled out at 06, engines rumbling as they left the relative safety of the base and headed into territory where insurgents had been increasingly active. The mountain pass was notorious, a winding road carved into cliffs on one side and dropping into valleys on the other. It was the kind of terrain that made convoy commanders nervous and ambush planners salivate. Elena sat in the passenger seat of the lead vehicle, her eyes constantly scanning the landscape, reading the terrain like a language only she understood. 3 hours into the journey, she spoke her first words. "Stop the convoy." The driver looked at her, then at the road ahead. Nothing seemed wrong. The mountains rose peacefully on either side. The road was clear, and their scouts had reported no activity. "Ma'am, we're on schedule," and Elena's voice cut through .com but absolute. "Stop the convoy now." Something in her tone made the driver comply. The vehicles ground to a halt, engines idling. Bulldog's voice crackled over the radio, irritation clear. "What's the holdup?" Elena was already out of the vehicle, moving to the rear where she extracted her rifle from its case with reverent care. It was a custom piece, a precision instrument that looked like it had been through a dozen conflicts. She moved 20 yards off the road, dropped to a prone position behind a cluster of rocks, and began scanning the ridgeline ahead through her scope. The SEALs gathered, watching with a mixture of curiosity and annoyance. "What exactly are we looking for?" Bulldog asked, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Elena didn't respond. Her breathing had slowed, her entire body still except for the minute adjustments she made to her rifle. Then, without warning, she fired. The shot echoed through the mountains, a single crack that seemed to hang in the air. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, one by one, figures began appearing on the ridgeline ahead, not moving toward them, but falling. 18 shots in rapid succession, each one precise, each one deliberate. Elena's rifle spoke a language of its own, and with each report, another threat vanished. The SEALs watched in stunned silence as she worked, her movements fluid, her breathing controlled, her focus absolute. She wasn't just shooting targets. She was conducting a symphony of precision that dismantled an entire ambush before it could spring. When the 18th shot rang out, Elena finally lowered her rifle. She stood, brushed dust from her uniform, and walked back to the vehicle. "The road is clear," she said simply. As if she'd just cleared a routine obstacle rather than eliminated an entire insurgent cell that had been preparing to destroy their convoy. Bulldog felt something shift in his chest, a mixture of shame and awe. He jogged to the ridgeline with 2 of his teammates, and what they found there took their breath away. 18 positions, each one perfectly camouflaged, each one now silent. RPGs, machine guns, explosives, all positioned to create a kill zone that would have devastated their convoy. The rest of the journey passed in silence of a different kind. Not the silence of skepticism, but the silence of respect. Elena never boasted, never explained, never sought acknowledgement. She simply did her job with a level of skill that redefined what these elite warriors thought possible. When they finally reached their destination, Bulldog approached her as she was packing her gear. "How did you know?" he asked, genuine curiosity replacing his earlier arrogance. Elena paused, considering her words carefully. "I grew up in a small village where survival meant seeing what others missed. My grandfather taught me to read the land, to understand that nature tells stories if you know how to listen. The birds weren't flying in that section. The wind carried dust from positions that should have been undisturbed. The light reflected differently off metal that shouldn't have been there." She slung a rifle case over her shoulder and looked at him with those ice blue eyes. "Strength isn't always about how loud you can be or how much you can lift. Sometimes it's about how still you can become, how carefully you can observe, how precisely you can act when the moment demands it. You and your team are warriors, some of the best in the world. But every warrior needs someone watching from a different perspective, seeing threats from angles you're trained to overlook." Bulldog extended his hand, and she shook it firmly. "Thank you for watching our 6. Elena smiled, a rare expression that softened her features. "Thank you for learning to trust it." As she walked away, Bulldog realized that courage came in many forms, that strength wore many faces, and that sometimes the quietest voices carried the most powerful messages. Elena Volkov had saved 60 lives with 18 shots, not because she needed to prove anything, but because she understood that true service meant doing what needed to be done without seeking recognition. In a world that often celebrated the loudest and most visible, she reminded them that sometimes the greatest warriors are the ones you never see coming, the silent sentinels who stand between chaos and safety, asking for nothing but the chance to do their duty with honor and precision.